Hi everyone and welcome to the internet. What we're going to be doing in today's lesson is having a look at the circulatory system. So hopefully by the end of today's lesson you're going to be able to describe what the circulatory system is and explain how we transport blood around our bodies. To start us off though, we've got 3 questions based around our previous lesson, so have a go at answering these 3 questions in your books. I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to have a go at that. Let's mark those answers then. So for the first one, to calculate our surface area to volume ratio of our 3 centimetre cubed, then what we need to do is work out the surface area first of all. So 3 times 3 gives us the area of a single face, and there are 6 of them in a cube, so times that by 6 gives us 54 centimetres squared. Give yourself a mark if you got the surface area right. Second one, to work out the volume, is just 3 times 3 times 3, which gives us 27. Tick for that one. And then the surface area to volume ratio would be 54 to 27, mark for that, and then if you simplified it down 2 to 1, mark for that. So you get 4 marks for question 1. Question 2, looking at how the lungs are adapted for gas exchange. If you said alveoli are present, get a mark. If you said that the alveoli increase the surface area, give yourself a tick. If you said that the walls of the alveoli are only a single cell thick, give yourself a mark. And if you said that that's to reduce the diffusion pathway or give it a shorter diffusion pathway, get a mark for that one. If you talked about the fact that there's a good blood supply or there's a lot of capillaries surrounding them, a mark for that. And finally, to explain that that means that we maintain the concentration gradient, or it gives it a steep concentration gradient, a mark for that. So maximum of 6 for question 2. And then finally, the structures that increase the surface area in the intestines and you've got two possibilities for your answer here, either the villi or the microvilli. So give yourself a mark if you've got either of those. So once you've done that, add it all up, your marks are out of 11 for that one, so give yourself a score out of 11. Now I'm hoping that you've already got some prior knowledge about how we transport the blood around our body. And I've given you a picture in the middle of the screen there as hopefully a little bit of a hint as to how this happens. Now what I've given you is kind of the difference between those answers that would only get up to a grade 5 and then those that are targeting the top end, if you like, the grade 6 and above. Because they're both asking the same thing, they're both asking you to sort of say how blood is moved around the body. The difference is in the detail. So what I want you to try and do is actually explain how blood is moved around your body and try to include the names of as many parts of the circulatory system as you can and details about what any of those parts do as the blood is moving around the body. So I'm going to give you about 4 minutes to have a go at this, so really think it through and write your answers in your book for me. So what we can see on the screen then are all of the potential marking points that I came up with for this. So there's a lot of them. What you're going to do then is, as we go through these, just give yourself a tick for any of these points that you've got. So first one is just for the most obvious statement, which I hope we all got: blood is pumped around the body by the heart, or the heart acts as a pump. Then we go on to talk about the fact that the blood will enter the heart from the vena cava, mark for that one. It goes into the right atrium, a mark, passing through the tricuspid valve, mark for that word, and then into the right ventricle, mark for that bit. Where it's pumped to the lungs to pick up oxygen, a mark for that, and again I hope we got that bit in our answers for virtually all cases. It then travels through the semilunar valve and the pulmonary artery in order to actually get to those lungs. So if you've got the semilunar valve and pulmonary artery, you can get a mark for each of those parts. It will return to the heart through the pulmonary vein, a mark for that, and it enters the left atrium, a mark for that one. Then it goes through the bicuspid valve, a mark, into the left ventricle, mark, where it's then pumped through the semilunar valve, mark again, into the aorta, which takes blood around the body, a mark for that. The only other thing I think we could have said there is for pointing out that we will then get exchanges between the blood and the cells taking place in the capillaries, so you can have a mark for that as well. So lots of marks there. If you need a bit more time just to double check your answers against this, then obviously hit pause on the video and take as long as you need. But once you've got that, add up your marks, because we've got a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15 it's out of this time. So give yourself a score out of 15 in your books for that. If you're not particularly confident with names of bits of the heart yet, don't panic. We are going to go over that in a lot more detail when we look at the heart itself. So that one is going to come back around again. What we're really going to focus on is the kind of whole system in today's lesson. And one of the things we need to know then are some terms that we associate with the circulatory system. So when we're talking about the circulatory system in humans, it's something called a closed system. So think about why we might call it a closed system. Write down the first sentence in your book and then see if you can finish off that second one. This is because, and give me a suggestion as to why it's called a closed system. Hopefully, what we wrote down for the reason that we call this a closed system is because the blood remains in either the heart or the blood vessels at all times. So in humans, your blood is constantly contained within either your heart or the blood vessels at every stage of its existence and of your existence. It's not like in some other animals whereby they've got what's called an open circulatory system, where basically it just flows out of the heart into the chambers of the actual body itself, so it just flows through a cavity. Now, we've obviously not got that. It's always contained within those arteries and veins and capillaries and your heart at all times. So finish off that sentence if you didn't get it. A second phrase that we associate with the human circulatory system is we refer to it as a double circulatory system. Now again, I want you to have a little think about why it could be called a double circulatory system, and the picture that I've given you in the kind of, well, roughly middle of the screen might give you a hint there. Then you've got two terms, oxygenated blood and deoxygenated blood, that I'd like you to try and write a definition for. So have a go at finishing off those 3 points for me in your books. So the first one then, the reason that we refer to the human circulatory system as a double circulatory system is because on one circuit that blood takes around your body, it's actually going to pass through your heart twice. So if we look at the picture I've given you there of the kind of very basic overview of your circulatory system, we've obviously got the blue half, which is our deoxygenated side, and what's going to happen is it goes into the right hand side of the heart, and then it comes back into the left hand side of the heart. So the blood is actually passing through the heart on 2 separate occasions during its one journey around the body. In terms of our 2 definitions, oxygenated and deoxygenated blood, it's a little bit of common sense I'd hope here. Oxygenated blood is blood with oxygen bound to it, whereas deoxygenated blood, we've not got oxygen bound to the hemoglobin. So make sure you've got those answers written down if you didn't get them. If you did get them, give yourself a tick for each one you got right. Last thing we've got on there is at the very bottom you can see there's a photograph of 2 round bottom flasks containing blood. Now what we've got, the one on the right is blood in an oxygen environment, so it's got that really rich red colour there, which is what we kind of expect blood to look like. And the one on the left is our blood with carbon dioxide only present, so there's no oxygen in there. So that would be our deoxygenated blood. And hopefully what you'll notice is, contrary to what some people say, that your deoxygenated blood is blue, no it's not. Okay, and we do kind of use misleading diagrams as well, because obviously on the diagram above you can see it's the blue side. But the blood itself, when deoxygenated, is never blue. It's actually that dark purple colour. The reason it looks blue when you look at your veins is because of the way that the light is transmitted through your skin. So remember, oxygenated blood is red and your deoxygenated blood is a dark purple colour. So make sure you've got those points written down. If you need any longer, just hit pause on the video. Now, the impact of having this double circulatory system is actually pretty significant to us as an organism. Because what it means is that because the blood is going through the heart twice on its one circuit around the body, then it's actually being pumped twice on each circuit around the body. So what I'd like you to do is write down the top sentence and then see if you can answer those 2 questions for me. So the first one, what effect does this have on the pressure exerted on the blood? And the second one, explain why the change in pressure resulting from the double pump is essential for larger organisms. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to have a go at those questions. If we start by considering the effect then, what we find is that because it's going through two completely separate sides of the heart, then it means that we can actually create a different pressure on the blood that leaves the two sides of the heart. So we can have one side exerting a higher pressure than the other. Which leads us very nicely on to question 2, because when we're pumping the blood to our lungs, we don't want that to be under really high pressure, because that tissue around the lungs is actually very delicate, and if we pump the blood under very high pressures in through those tissues, we cause a lot of damage. So what we do is we pump the blood from the right hand side of the heart under a lower pressure, because it's only going as far as your lungs, which hopefully we know are pretty much right next to your heart in terms of your locations in the body, and it's going to reduce the risk of damage to that delicate tissue. But it does mean that as a larger organism, we've still got to get that oxygenated blood all the way around our body, from our head right the way down to our toes. So what we can then do is on the left hand side of the heart, where the oxygenated blood is going to be pumped around the body, then we can have a much higher pressure, which allows it to get to the far ends of our actual bodies itself. So make sure you've got those answers written down if you didn't get them right. So I'll leave that up for about 30 more seconds, but if you're going to need longer, obviously just hit pause. So we've talked about the actual role of the heart, but we've also mentioned these things called blood vessels. And there are 3 types of blood vessel in the body. See if you can write down those 3 types in your book. are three types of blood vessel: artery, vein and capillary. Give yourself a tick for each one you got right. If you didn't get those, make sure you filled them in. What we're going to do then is have a look at these blood vessels in a little bit more detail. So to start us off, we're going to have a look at those key features, if you like, about each of those blood vessels. So the words we're going to use are arteries, veins and capillaries, which are at the bottom. See if you can finish off those 3 sentences with the right blood vessel in the right place. Let's check those then. So our first one, blood leaves the heart under high pressure through the arteries, blood returns to the heart in veins, and exchanges between the blood and surrounding tissues happens in the capillaries. So I always think an easy way to remember which one is taking the blood away from the heart is just link the word away and arteries. So A for away, A for arteries, always taking the blood away from the heart there. What we now need to do is have a look at some of those key features of each blood vessel in turn. So to start off with, we'll look at the arteries. Now what I'd suggest you do is get these 2 sentences written down, obviously finishing the first one off, and if you want to do the sketch on the left hand side there of the artery with those labels, by all means feel free. So I'm going to leave this slide up here for about a minute to give you a chance to do whatever you want to, but if you want longer because you're going to do a really nice drawing of the artery, then by all means hit pause on the video. So the reason that our arteries have this thick muscular and elastic wall is because the blood that's flowing through the arteries is actually moving away from the heart, so that's where the pressure is highest. So because the blood is under this high pressure, the arteries have to be able to withstand this. So they've got these thick muscle and elastic walls to basically stop them bursting. Now what we find is that as the heart contracts and forces blood into the arteries, then the wall is going to expand. Once it's actually expanded and the blood has flowed through, it's then going to have this recoil, so it's going to basically shrink back to its original size, and that's going to push the blood forward. And this is going to continue right the way through your arteries. Now, when we actually place our fingers on our neck or our wrist or other parts of the body you can find your pulse, then what you're actually feeling is that expansion and recoil of the artery walls as the blood is flowing through it. That's what causes your pulse. So one of the things they do like to do on your exams is ask you to identify which particular blood vessel we've got from either a microscope image or a diagram. So you do need to be familiar with that thick muscle and elastic wall of the artery, and you can see it in the microscope image on the right there. So that pink coloured bit, that is our thick muscle and elastic wall, okay? The second type of blood vessel we need to know about are the veins. Now you can see from the pictures that veins are quite different to our arteries. They've got a thinner wall and a larger lumen, the space the blood flows through. And this is because blood is under lower pressure in our veins. They're returning the blood to the heart, remember. Now, because we've got this lower pressure, then what we need is a new structure within our vein called a valve. Now, valves are basically like a flap of skin that's going to allow blood to only go one way, so it stops blood flowing back the wrong way when it's under this lower pressure. Make sure you've got those 3 points written in your books, and if they ask you a question on comparing the structure of arteries and veins, because it's a comparison question, we've got to use those terms that make it clear you're comparing the structures. So you couldn't just say veins have a thin wall, because that's not comparing to anything. You could say veins have a thin wall and arteries have a thick wall. That's fine. Or you could say veins have a thinner wall than arteries. So it's making sure you are using that comparative terminology. The third and final blood vessel are the capillaries. Now, what we find is the capillaries are really important because this is where the exchanges take place with the cells. Now, in order to allow that to happen, we need structures here that are going to be making diffusion as efficient as possible. So when you look at the picture there, you can see it's actually got a wall that's made of a single layer of cells. And that's all down to the fact that it's going to make diffusion faster because we've got a shorter diffusion pathway. So write down those 2 points about capillaries and then give me a definition for diffusion just to finish off this bit. Hopefully we all remember the definition for diffusion is the net movement of substances from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. So give yourself a tick if you got that bit right. To finish off today then, we've got our plenary questions. So those of you with a target grade up to a grade 5, it's the 2 columns on the left. Those of you with a target grade over a grade 5, it's the 2 columns on the right. So I'm going to leave these up for a couple of minutes today, but if you're going to need longer, obviously just hit pause on the video and take as long as you need. As always, you can find the answers to the plenary over on my website, sciencewright.weebly.com. You'll also be able to find that under the Internet tab. Just select the week that we're in, and then you'll be able to find things like the lesson PowerPoints, the answers to the plenary, any additional work, and if there's any little experiments I thought you could do at home, then they're there too. So have a look and get using that.